There are moments in life when words wound deeper than any slap. Moments when love is buried beneath anger and regret comes too late. Betty's life was a delicate balancing act. As a single mother, she juggled long hours at a demanding job with the challenges of raising her 17-year-old daughter, Joyce. Her workplace was a daily battlefield, not just because of the workload, but due to the unwelcome advances of her boss, whose lingering glances and inappropriate comments made every day a test of endurance. And as the days went by, she got lost in trying to get by. Meanwhile, at home, Joyce had become increasingly withdrawn, her once open demeanor replaced by sullen silence and secretive behavior. Betty attributed it to typical teenage angst, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. One evening, after deflecting yet another inappropriate comment from her boss, Betty returned home to find Joyce absent. A sense of unease settled in her stomach, which turned to alarm when she noticed the bathroom door slightly ajar. Pushing the door open, Betty's gaze fell upon a small, discarded pregnancy test on the sink's edge. The two bold lines blurred as her vision swam. Her heart raced, a mix of disbelief and dread flooding her senses. She was still staring at the pregnancy test. When Joyce finally walked through the front door, Betty's fear erupted into anger. The confrontation was explosive. "What have you done? How could you? You're pregnant. At your age, do you know what I went through raising you alone? I sacrificed everything, and you throw your life away. For what, a boy? You're useless, just like your father." And in a moment of uncontrolled rage, Betty struck her daughter. While the slap echoed through the small apartment, the words spoken hit deeper. The following days were a blur of regret and stubborn pride. Unable to hold on it, Betty decided to confide in her best friend Lisa, whose calm demeanor and wise counsel provided a lifeline. Over cold bottles of beer in a nearby restaurant, Lisa gently urged Betty to approach the situation with empathy and understanding.
My friend, I understand the gravity of the situation and your frustration, but this is not the time to cry. It is the time to act. You of all people should know what it feels like to be abandoned and shamed. You're doing to her what the world did to you. Please, don't forsake your daughter. Bring her closer and at least get to know who's responsible.
Determined to make amends, Betty returned home, rehearsing her apology. But Joyce's room was empty, her closet half open and clothes missing. Panic set in as the reality of the situation dawned on her. Joyce was gone. Desperate to find her daughter, Betty called her friend Lisa, and together they scoured the city on a frantic search. They combed through parks, bus stations, and familiar haunts, their hope dwindling with each passing hour. As dawn approached, they found themselves beneath a flyover bridge. And there, huddled against the cold concrete, was Joyce. The sight of her daughter, vulnerable and scared, shattered the remnants of Betty's anger. She rushed forward, enveloping Joyce in a tight embrace. Tears flowed freely as apologies tumbled from Betty's lips, met with Joyce's own remorseful sobs. In that moment, the chasm that had formed between them began to close, bridged by mutual forgiveness and love. And as they went back home, so many thoughts crossed Betty's mind on who the father could be. That Joyce even had someone with whom she was having sexual relations with was even surprising, and it made Betty realize one thing. She had been so consumed, drowning in responsibilities, in the struggle to move forward, that she never noticed what was happening right in front of her. She never saw her daughter slipping away, and now it was too late. Whatever was left to salvage, Betty decided she was going to be there, actively involved, and the first step was finding out who was responsible, who had done this to her daughter, a minor. At first, Joyce was reluctant to say, scared even, but after much reassurance and persuasion, she opened up. The deed had been done in school by her maths teacher, Mr. Collins. You see, Joyce was preparing to enter the university, and so all the students in her level had been advised to enroll in extra after-school lessons to enable them perform better academically. Mr. Collins had been making subtle comments, and eventually one evening when Joyce got stuck in school after the extra lessons due to a heavy downpour, he had the opportunity. He raped her. It was nothing but pure evil, because not only did he rape her, he also threatened to drown her in the lake that ran behind the school if she ever told anyone. He had stolen her innocence, trapping her in a world of silence and fear. Betty's world turned to ice. Rage burned through her veins. How had she failed her daughter so terribly? How had she not seen the fear in her eyes, the pain hidden behind her silence? Determined to seek justice, she stormed into the school, demanding answers. But justice was already out of reach. Mr. Collins had disappeared, resigned and vanished without a trace. Clueless on what to do next but refusing to give up, Betty began asking questions. She wanted all the information the school could give about Mr. Collins. And then the moment came when she was handed his CV. Betty's mouth fell open as she stared at the file, her heart beating faster than ever. Mr. Collins was not just some monster lurking in the shadows. He was a ghost from her past. The familiar tribal marks stared back at her from the file. He was a man she had once loved, a man who had abandoned her and her child 17 years ago. He was Joyce's father. The truth struck like a dagger. The walls closed in, the air turned suffocating. The past she had spent years burying had risen, more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. Tears fell from her eyes. How could she tell Joyce the truth? That the man who destroyed her was her own blood? For nights, Betty sat in silence, watching her daughter sleep, drowning in a storm of guilt and agony. The weight of the truth pressed down on her. Joyce was already broken. Would knowing the truth shatter her beyond repair? Torn between justice and the unbearable shame and stigmatization that would follow, Betty made a choice. Some truths, she decided, were better left buried. Some wounds could never be healed. And so, when Joyce's child was born, they packed their bags and left. Off they went to a new city, a new beginning, and a promise between mother and daughter that the past would never be spoken of again. The child was raised by Betty, and Joyce went back to school and went on to become a medical doctor. All seemed well for a while, the past forgotten, until Joyce, now called Dr. Joyce, found herself face to face with the one ghost she thought she'd never see again. Her patient was the man who ruined her life. Her teacher, her abuser, and unknown to her at the time, her father. At first, she didn't recognize him. The years had not been kind to him. And now, he was just another dying man with an organ failure, desperate for an organ donor. The hospital ran through their database for any matches they could find, and the system flagged her as a perfect donor match for the dying man. Her hands trembled as she stared at the report, for it wasn't just a random donor match. It was a biological match. It was unbelievable to Joyce. She was confused, so she decided to conduct a DNA test, and at long last, she finally discovered the truth her mother tried so hard to bury. But now the irony was suffocating. The only person who could save him was the very child he abandoned, raped, and destroyed her life. Joyce couldn't believe her eyes, and so she rushed home to the one person who could confirm everything and clear the confusion. Her mother, Betty. Betty cried, and in between sobs, said all she had tried so hard for years to hide.
I wanted to protect you. I wanted you to have a chance at life without the weight of his sins on your shoulders.
Joyce felt anger, confusion, and betrayal. That night, Joyce couldn't sleep. She just kept staring at the ceiling, drowning in a sea of memories, pain, betrayal, and the haunting echoes of a stolen childhood. She had a choice to make: save him or let him go. By dawn, she had made her decision. That morning, she walked into his room and for the first time introduced herself completely to him. He was shaken. He begged and pleaded for mercy. She stood and stared at him for a while, her eyes filled with anger and revenge, and then she leaned closer, close enough to whisper into his ears.
I am your daughter, the same girl you threw away, the same girl you destroyed. And now, I'm the only one who can save you, but I won't.
She stepped backward and watched as the color drained from his face, his lips trembling with unspoken regret. And without another word, Joyce turned and walked away. For the first time in her life, she felt free. Mr. Collins' organs eventually failed completely, and he died a few weeks later. Some stories do not end with forgiveness. Some wounds do not heal with time, and some justice is found in simply walking away.